She was just a maid. Yet she made the most powerful woman in Beverly Hills lose what money could never buy: her son's love. No one could have imagined that a single glance between two worlds so far apart would ignite a war between pride and the heart, a battle that would change everything. Amid crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, and polite lies stands Sophie Adams, a young woman with the kind of courage that no millionaire could ever afford. When Daniel Hale, the heir to a vast fortune, falls in love with her, a forbidden romance begins to bloom, pure, fragile, and impossible to hide. What starts as a simple connection soon becomes a fight against prejudice, power, and fear. Before the story begins, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because tonight, you'll see that sometimes the maid's heart shines brighter than all the millionaire's diamonds. Sophie Adams arrived in Beverly Hills with the calm of someone who carries the weight of the world, yet still believes she can transform it. Young, determined, and quietly strong, she began working as a maid in the mansion of the millionaire Victoria Hale, a woman known as much for her wealth as for her arrogance. With every step inside that house, Sophie felt she wasn't just cleaning floors but crossing invisible borders between two worlds. The Hale mansion was a world of its own. Marble walls, shining staircases, and an air of superiority floating in every corner. For many, that place symbolized success. For Sophie, it was a reminder that the brightest lights often cast the darkest shadows. Her job was simple, yet her presence began to disturb the balance. There was something about her posture, a silent dignity that defied the unspoken rules of that household. Victoria watched Sophie with cold, analytical eyes. The millionaire was used to being served, not silently challenged by the grace of someone who refused to bow out of fear. The contrast between the two women was sharp. One carried the burden of appearances, the other the weight of truth. Inside that mansion, a quiet conflict began to grow. Between the luxury that needed to prove its worth and the humility that was born worthy. Sophie worked with precision and calm. Every movement reflected discipline and respect, virtues rare in a world driven by vanity. She knew life owed her nothing, which was why she gave everything she had. She was like a character in one of those emotional stories that face destiny's trials not with speeches, but with quiet persistence. Her strength was discreet, but undeniable, and people were starting to notice. In the heart of Beverly Hills, where everything sparkled but felt empty, Sophie stood out precisely because she didn't try to. Her presence embodied a living moral story. Real value isn't found in clothes but in conduct. Not in names but in character. Without realizing it, she had already begun to draw attention, some of admiration, others of disdain. Amid gold and ego, the maid became the only light in the room. As she cleaned the long corridors and organized the grand halls, Sophie's thoughts were always on her younger sister, Hilly. Every hour of work was a silent promise of a better future. That bond of sisterly love gave meaning to the exhaustion. What others called humble work was, to Sophie, an act of love. The emotional foundation of an inspirational drama still waiting to unfold. That week, Victoria was preparing an extravagant reception for Beverly Hills elite. Sophie was assigned to make the ballroom flawless, and she did so with her usual dedication. As she worked, she watched the preparations and wondered what it would be like to stand among those people, not as a servant, but as an equal. That curiosity marked the beginning of something new. The awakening of a woman who was starting to see her own worth beyond appearances. During the event, laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses filled the air. Sophie tried to remain invisible, but destiny never asks for permission. When Daniel Hale walked into the room, the atmosphere shifted. The air had a different look, curious, attentive, almost too human for that world. His eyes met Sophie's, and for a fleeting second, time itself seemed to hold its breath. That brief encounter was the beginning of something no one could have foreseen. One glance was enough for two opposite worlds to recognize each other. She, the maid who scrubbed away the traces of luxury. He, the heir who was beginning to question the price of wealth. The story that began in that moment would carry the brilliance and the ache of a Maid Millionaire story. A short film filled with love and courage. An English storytelling piece whose ending was still unwritten. Daniel Hale returned to Beverly Hills after years studying in New York. His eyes carried the weariness of someone who had seen the world, but was still searching for meaning within it. The moment he stepped back into his mother's mansion, he realized that luxury no longer brought pride, only distance. He was an heir with the heart of a man who longed to be free. Little did he know that among mirrors and cold walls, a maid would change the course of his life forever. Sophie Adams continued to work with quiet serenity, unaware that she was becoming the center of an emotional stories. Her discreet, almost invisible nature drew attention precisely because she didn't seek it. Daniel watched her closely, trying to understand what made this woman so different from the others. And in that contrast, something rare began to take shape: respect before desire. Their first exchange was brief, almost shy. Daniel asked if she liked her job. Sophie replied with a reserved smile, saying that liking wasn't quite the word, but needing was. Her response struck him like a quiet revelation. It was the kind of truth that stripped privilege bare and revealed humanity. In that instant, this moral story stopped being about social difference. It became about empathy and awakening. Victoria Hale noticed the growing closeness with sharp eyes. The millionaire was used to controlling everything, including her son's heart. To her, Sophie was a threat, a reminder that not all that glitters is gold. "She's not from our world," she said in the calm tone of someone giving an order. Daniel didn't respond, but something inside him stirred. Sometimes all it takes is a prohibition for the heart to find its own path. Sophie, though aware of his interest, kept her distance. She knew that love between such different worlds could come at a painful cost, yet there was something about Daniel that disarmed her. He spoke with gentleness, without the arrogance that wealth so often teaches. For a moment, the Hale name lost its weight, leaving only a man trying to understand a woman. It was a fragment of an inspirational drama hidden within ordinary days. Meanwhile, Ashley Collins, Daniel's girlfriend, was the perfect face of Beverly Hills elite. Blonde, elegant, confident. But her smile hid a deep, familiar fear, the fear of being replaced by someone more genuine. The moment she noticed Daniel's gaze linger on the maid, she felt the first bitter taste of insecurity. What began as jealousy soon darkened into something else entirely. And every Maid millionaire story needs an antagonist worthy of its heroine. In that house, appearances were worth more than feelings. Every gesture was watched, every word carried weight. Sophie continued her work in silence, but the mansion's walls seemed to watch her. Daniel tried to act normal, but his heart betrayed him. It was a quiet tension, like the pause before a symphony begins. The most powerful short film moments are often born in those still breaths between glances. Victoria, ever calculating, began to weave her plan. She knew that forbidden love only grows stronger, and she intended to cut it off at the root. Ashley, vain and easily influenced, was the perfect accomplice. Between glasses of champagne and polite smiles, they sealed an invisible pact to humiliate Sophie and remind her of her place. It was the beginning of a conflict that would define not only their fates but the entire tone of this English storytelling. And as the web of power tightened around her, Sophie remained steadfast, unaware of what was coming. Daniel, torn between duty and emotion, struggled to balance love and loyalty to his mother. The sky over Beverly Hills seemed heavier, foreshadowing storms ahead. Every glance exchanged between them became a silent promise, a secret teetering on the edge of ruin. And on the horizon something stirred, the first signs of a trap taking shape. Life at the Hale mansion moved with its usual rhythm, hurried footsteps, sharp commands, long silences. But there was something new in the air, something even Victoria couldn't control. The silent exchange of glances between the heir and the maid. Sophie Adams, in her usual calmness, began to feel the weight of Daniel's attention. It was an unspoken game, a dialogue without words, the kind of connection that happens in the pauses where emotional stories truly begin. Daniel Hale couldn't explain what he felt. Maybe it was admiration, maybe curiosity, or perhaps something deeper. There was a quiet strength in Sophie that unsettled his logic. While the world around him revolved around appearances, she remained grounded, simple, and true. He started finding excuses to be near her, and every glance they shared seemed to ignite something that even wealth couldn't extinguish. Sophie, on the other hand, tried to stay focused. She knew that when the heart gets distracted, it can be cruel. Every time he approached, her body reacted before reason could intervene. Love, after all, doesn't ask for permission. It simply happens. And in those fleeting moments when their eyes met, she sensed that this inspirational drama was only just beginning. Lily, Sophie's younger sister, noticed the change. "You smile differently lately," she said one evening. Sophie pretended not to hear, but the smile was real, soft and brief. Lily dreamed of a better life for both of them and believed that love might be the path. There was a tender innocence in her words, the kind of hope that fuels the greatest moral story of all, the belief in something good amid struggle. Days passed, and the tension between Sophie and Daniel evolved into a quiet connection. He admired how she faced his mother's arrogance with silent grace. She saw in him a rare kindness buried beneath the Hale name. They shared the same gaze, the look of those who recognize truth in a world of masks. In a short film about love and inequality, this would be the most powerful frame. Ashley Collins, ever watchful, began to notice the difference. Daniel's gaze no longer belonged to her. Her wounded pride mixed with fear, the fear of being replaced by someone more genuine. And so, between sighs and envy, she decided to act. At dinner, she feigned kindness, dropping subtle remarks meant to test her rival. Sophie caught the venom beneath the sweetness and for the first time, felt the true weight of being at the center of a Maid millionaire story. Victoria, meanwhile, observed everything with the precision of someone moving pieces on an invisible chessboard. She knew the attraction between her son and the Maid was growing, and it infuriated her. To her, it wasn't just disobedience, it was a threat. The millionaire couldn't stand losing control, and Sophie's quiet dignity felt like defiance. The conflict between power and purity was taking shape, and the first act of war was silently unfolding. Even under watchful eyes, Sophie and Daniel kept communicating through glances. In the hallways, in mirror reflections, even in the quiet gardens, they shared a secret exchange. He saw in her the freedom he'd always sought. She saw in him the courage she feared she lacked. It was the kind of connection that didn't need words, the essence of an English storytelling about impossible love and fate. Then, one evening, fate brought them together again. Daniel was waiting for his mother in the grand hall when Sophie passed by, carrying a bucket and a cloth. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the entire world stood still. Time stretched, sound faded. In that wordless instant, a promise was born, one that no one could stop. Love had already begun, and like every good film, life was about to change its tone. The morning at the Hale mansion began in calm silence, but tranquility was only a facade. Victoria and Ashley had made their move, and the plan started with something seemingly innocent, an invitation. Feigning courtesy, they called Sophie into the main hall for a conversation. Victoria's smile was soft, yet her eyes held something cold. "You've been doing a wonderful job, my dear," she said, and the trap began to unfold. Sophie, surprised, kept her composure. She wasn't used to receiving praise from the millionaire. When she heard about the upcoming gala that would take place in the mansion, she hesitated. "We'd love for you to attend," Ashley said with practiced sweetness. It was an invitation impossible to refuse, even though Sophie's heart sensed something was wrong. And so, with a lump in her throat, she accepted. That night back home, Sophie tried to hide her unease. Lily noticed. "You seem worried, sis," she said, resting her head on Sophie's shoulder. Sophie explained that she'd been invited to the party but didn't have anything to wear. Lily, with her innocent faith, replied, "Maybe this is your chance to show them who you really are." It was the seed of hope, the quiet spark that precedes every turning point in emotional stories. Sophie spent hours staring at her reflection in the mirror. The image she saw was too simple for the world she was about to step into. It wasn't vanity, it was fear of not belonging. The greatest moral story moments are born from that exact conflict, the desire to be seen without having to change who you are. In the midst of doubt, she decided to ask her friend Maya for help, the talented seamstress who always believed in her. Maya welcomed her with a hug and a warm laugh. "So the millionaire wants you at her party, huh?" she teased, trying to lighten the moment. Sophie told her everything, and without hesitation, Maya began sketching the dress. Every stitch was a silent prayer for justice. As the needle pierced the fabric, the story of an inspirational drama began to take shape. A dress born of courage, not privilege. At the mansion, Victoria and Ashley were finalizing the last details of the event. They toasted with champagne, proud of their plan. "It will be unforgettable," Ashley said, her smile hiding cruelty. Victoria replied calmly, "Nothing hurts a woman more than believing she belongs somewhere she doesn't." And so, the villains sealed the fate of the maid, setting the stage for humiliation. Meanwhile, Daniel knew nothing. His days were filled with family obligations, unaware that the love guiding his heart was about to be tested. His name shone in social columns, but his heart stayed quiet. He thought of Sophie often without understanding why. Love in Maid Millionaire story is born in the shadows and grows through pain. When the dress was finished, Sophie tried it on before the mirror. The bluish-gray fabric shimmered softly in the morning light, and for the first time in a long while, she saw herself as whole. Lily watched with tears in her eyes. "You look beautiful, Sophie," she whispered. And she was right. It was the beauty of strength and dignity. The world might call her a maid, but in that moment, she was already a protagonist. On the eve of the gala, Sophie walked toward the mansion gates with her heart pounding. The Beverly Hills breeze carried both promise and foreboding. Every step felt like a challenge to fate, and her steady gaze revealed that despite her simplicity, she knew her worth. The invitation wasn't just to a party, it was the threshold between two worlds. And on the other side, something awaited that would change everything. The night of the gala arrived, and Beverly Hills seemed to breathe luxury. The Hale mansion glowed like a modern palace. Imported cars lined the entrance, and guests wearing dazzling jewels crossed the marble floor. At the top of the grand staircase, Victoria watched with the pride of someone who believed she ruled the world. In the background, the sound of violins filled the air, wrapping the illusion of perfection. No one could imagine that the night would be remembered not for its glamour, but for the arrival of a maid. Sophie Adams arrived quietly, her heart racing. The dress Maya had made was a masterpiece, bluish-gray, fluid and elegant, with just the right amount of shimmer. Her hair, loose for the first time, fell over her shoulders like a cascade of silk. As she stepped through the gates, the guests' conversations faded. It was as if time had stopped for a second, an emotional stories moment about to unfold. Victoria noticed the crowd's reaction, and for a brief instant, lost her composure. The woman she intended to humiliate had become the center of every gaze. Ashley, standing beside her, clenched her jaw, jealousy burning behind her perfect smile. Daniel, who had looked bored until that moment, turned, and when his eyes found Sophie, he forgot to breathe. She was no longer the maid of the house. She was a luminous presence that defied the very meaning of class. She walked through the ballroom with measured steps, holding herself with quiet dignity. The guests whispered, but Sophie did not look away. The orchestra's music mixed with the tension of hushed voices. It was a living moral story. A simple woman unmasked, forcing an entire elite to rethink what true elegance means. Daniel, overcome with emotion, stepped forward through the crowd until he stood before her. Their eyes met, a silent fire burning between them. Without a word, he offered his hand. Sophie hesitated for a second, then let her heart decide. When their hands touched, the room seemed to glow from within. Daniel led her to the center, and the two began to dance. It was the very image of an inspirational drama. An impossible love turned into art before everyone's eyes. The music was slow, and time seemed suspended. As they danced, Sophie could feel her heartbeat in every note. Daniel, smiling sincerely, whispered, "I told you luxury never impressed me." She laughed softly, her eyes shining with emotion. It was the kind of moment that could turn any short film into something unforgettable. Real, delicate, and full of feeling. The beauty wasn't in the scenery, but in the truth between them. But not every light is meant to last. Victoria, watching from the balcony, stood frozen in rage. Her wounded pride boiled beneath her calm exterior. Ashley leaned in, whispering something venomous in her ear. Within seconds, Victoria's expression shifted from fury to resolve. The love blooming in the ballroom now had a target, and the golden night was about to turn into a battlefield. Lily, watching the live stream from home, was in tears. Seeing her sister dancing among millionaires felt like witnessing a miracle. "She did it, Maya," she cried with joy. Maya, sitting beside her, replied softly, "Not yet, Lily. This is only the beginning." The audience saw a fairy tale. The friends knew that in every Maid Millionaire story, the light always comes before the fall. As the music ended, Daniel gently held Sophie's hands. "Now everyone sees you as I always have," he whispered. The applause filled the ballroom, a mix of admiration and disbelief. For a fleeting moment, Sophie believed that fate could be kind. But Victoria's distant gaze, a cold, unblinking hour, said otherwise. It was the prelude to a new war, and love had just been put to the test. The ballroom shimmered like a dream, but dreams sometimes hide abysses. The sound of violins echoed among rehearsed laughter, and Sophie, standing at the center of the crowd, could still feel Daniel's touch on her hands. Victoria, motionless on the grand staircase, watched like an actress about to deliver the final blow. Beside her, Ashley smiled with the calm venom of someone who knows exactly what's about to happen. It was the perfect moment for a millionaire's trap. Ashley approached Sophie holding a glass of champagne. "You look stunning," she said, her smile too sweet to be genuine. Sophie, naive but kind, thanked her, unaware of the danger behind the politeness. In one subtle, deliberate move, Ashley stumbled by accident, spilling the golden liquid all over Sophie's bluish-gray dress. The entire room turned to look, and silence sliced through the air like a blade. Victoria descended the staircase slowly, wearing an expression of false surprise. "Oh dear, accidents happen, but perhaps this will remind you to know your place." Her voice floated like poison. A few guests giggled. Sophie's face flushed as she fought back tears. It was the turning point of an inspirational drama, the moment when dignity is tested before the world. From across the room, Daniel saw what was happening and rushed forward. "Mother, stop!" he shouted, his voice firm but filled with pain. Victoria feigned innocence, her gaze cold and calculating. "She's just an employee, Daniel. Don't ruin the evening with sentimentality." But he wasn't listening anymore. To him, the maid was the only person in the room not wearing a mask. In shock, Sophie tried to slip away quietly, but the crowd parted as if she carried an invisible mark. Her wet dress clung to her body, and the sound of her footsteps echoed among stifled laughter. Every glance felt like a verdict, and the ballroom, once a palace, had turned into a golden prison. In emotional stories, this is the moment the hero discovers her true strength. At the doorway, Sophie stopped. The cold night breeze of Beverly Hills sent a shiver through her, carrying a memory with it. Her sister's voice whispering, "Show them who you really are." She took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and walked away, her tears barely contained. She was the woman destiny tried to break, but never could. And thus began the greatest moral story of quiet courage. Daniel ran after her, ignoring his mother's furious glare. "Sophie, wait!" he called, catching up to her in the garden lit by soft golden lamps. The moonlight shimmered on her damp dress. He took her hand, breathless. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have let this happen." Sophie looked at him, her face a mixture of pain and resolve. "It wasn't your fault, Daniel. They'll never accept me." For a moment, silence surrounded them, the faint hum of the party echoing in the distance. Their love seemed small against a world so cruel and vast, yet something unbreakable lingered in their gaze. "Maybe they won't accept me," she said softly, "but I know who I am." It was the kind of line that defines a Maid millionaire story. Simple, honest, and powerful. From the ballroom window, Victoria watched them beneath the moonlight, her face still but her eyes blazing. Ashley, beside her, murmured, "I think your son's chosen the wrong side." Victoria replied coldly, "We'll see who wins when love faces power." The wind stirred the curtains, the music played on, and the war had begun, the cruelest kind of battle, heart versus pride. The garden of the Hale mansion felt like another world at that hour. The golden lights from the party no longer reached the grass, and the silence of the night wrapped around Sophie and Daniel like a shared secret. The full moon reflected on the damp leaves, and the distant sound of violins drifted softly from inside. It was one of those nights when time seems to pause, a breath before pain turns into destiny. Daniel found her sitting on a stone bench, her dress still stained, her gaze lost among the stars. "Sophie," he whispered, his voice trembling. She didn't answer right away. She was breathing deeply, gathering the strength not to collapse. When she finally looked at him, there was exhaustion and courage in equal measure. It was the beginning of an inspirational drama, not about luxury but about humanity. "I can't let them treat you like that," he said, kneeling before her. The moonlight fell across his face, revealing sincere pain, a guilt that words couldn't ease. Sophie shook her head quietly. It's not about what they do to me, Daniel. It's about who I become if I let it destroy me. Her tone was calm but firm, the voice of a woman who has already carried the weight of the world. Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away. You don't understand. I'm just a maid and your mother is a millionaire. We live on different planets, he sighed, a short, heavy sound. And what if I want to leave my planet to live on yours? Sophie laughed softly, incredulous but touched. For the first time that night, the air felt lighter, a flicker of hope amid the chaos. The stars seemed to watch them in silence. Their glow reflected in Sophie's eyes, and Daniel realized that her gaze carried something no diamond in the Hale family could ever match. Truth. You're different, he murmured. Different from everyone I've ever met. Sophie smiled faintly, maybe because I have nothing to lose except myself. And in that instant, love began to speak louder than fear. He moved closer, slowly, as if afraid to scare away something fragile. Their hands met and the world seemed to hang still for a moment. The wind stirred Sophie's hair, and the moon cast a soft outline around them. Their first kiss was tender but full of surrender. Pure, honest, the kind that makes the heart believe again. It was a moment worthy of emotional stories, where beauty is born from pain. Inside the house, hidden behind the curtains, Victoria watched. Her eyes were cold, her face unmoving, yet something new flickered there, fear. For the first time, she realized her power did not reach her son's heart. Ashley, standing beside her, whispered, "You're going to let this happen?" Victoria didn't answer. Her silence said it all. A plan was already taking shape. In the garden, Daniel rested his forehead against Sophie's. "Promise me you won't give up on us?" he asked softly. She took a deep breath, hesitant. "I promise to try," she said, smiling through wet eyes. Sometimes love doesn't need guarantees, only courage to exist. The moon wrapped them in its quiet blessing, witness to a love that shouldn't have been possible, and so, beneath the shimmer of the stars and the weight of reality, something was born that even wealth couldn't buy. It was the start of a love that defied the impossible, the heart of a common woman and the man who finally understood what truly mattered. But fate, that old and mischievous screenwriter, still had surprises in store for this Maid Millionaire story. The sun rose over Beverly Hills, gilding the flawless facades of the mansions. But inside the Hale house, a different kind of light shimmered, the glow of deceit. Victoria, still wounded by the scene from the night before, prepared her strike with surgical precision. It wasn't enough to separate the couple. She needed to destroy Sophie's name, erase every trace of her dignity, and when power feels threatened, the sweetest poison is born. Sophie arrived early, as always, determined to pretend nothing had happened. A simple blue dress, her hair tied in a bun, her eyes lowered, but the air inside the mansion felt different, heavy, tense, the calm before a storm. The staff avoided her gaze, whispering among themselves. Then Victoria's voice rang out from the top of the staircase, sharp and cold. "Where is the jewel that went missing after last night's party?" Sophie's heart pounded. I don't know what you're talking about." But Victoria descended slowly, holding an open, empty jewelry box. Funny, there was only one person here who needed money. A maid. The room filled with murmurs. Sophie went pale, feeling the ground disappear beneath her feet. It was the cruel beginning of a moral story, where truth becomes the most expensive prize. Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs, his face pale. "Mother, what are you doing?" Victoria smiled perfectly, not even glancing at him. "My duty, dear, protecting our family from those who only wish to take advantage of it." Sophie tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Each word felt like a blow. And in Daniel's eyes, she saw the pain of a man who loves but doesn't know how to fight his own blood. A silent court formed, servants and guests watching like judges. Victoria lifted the jewelry box high for all to see. This piece is worth more than most people's lives, and it was found in the room where she got dressed. The silence grew dense. Sophie trembled, yet kept her chin raised. "You can take everything from me," she said firmly, "except who I am." It was the kind of line born in the best inspirational drama, courage in the midst of chaos. Daniel descended the staircase, each step a declaration. "Enough, this is a setup and you know it." Victoria's eyes flared. "Daniel, don't make me choose between you and the truth." He took a deep breath, anger and sorrow tangled in his voice. "The truth, Mother, is that you can't stand seeing someone richer than your money." The words fell like thunder, and the entire room seemed to shake. Victoria quickly regained her poise, her smile returning like a weapon. "If you keep defending that woman, you'll lose everything, your inheritance, your name, your respect." Daniel hesitated, and for an instant Sophie saw fear flicker across his face. The weight of his choice crushed him, but even in silence, his eyes said it all. Love no longer fit within the rules of power, and power, wounded, began to strike back. With a trembling voice, Sophie removed her apron and placed it on a nearby table. "Don't worry, Mrs. Hale, I don't steal what isn't mine." Then she walked toward the main door, every step echoing through the hall. Each tear a quiet act of defiance. It was the fall before rebirth, the pain that comes before light in the great emotional stories of resilience. Outside, the wind swept across the driveway, stirring the dust. Sophie looked back one last time, the mansion now distant like a world she would never belong to. The sun reflected in her eyes, and for a fleeting moment she smiled. Because even without a home, a job, or a name, she still had something no one could take away: the truth. And that, in the end, is worth more than gold itself. Days had passed since Sophie left the Hale mansion, but the weight of humiliation still echoed in her heart. Yet every dawn brought with it a new kind of silence, not emptiness, but possibility. She found work at a small local hotel, nothing luxurious but honest and peaceful. The rhythm was simple: cleaning rooms, changing sheets, greeting strangers. It wasn't glory, but it was freedom. Sometimes survival itself is a quiet kind of victory. In her new life, Sophie rediscovered something long buried: herself. No fine chandeliers, no whispers behind her back, just the hum of morning air and the satisfaction of a job well done. Every towel folded, every floor polished was an act of self-respect. The uniform was the same, but now it no longer represented submission. It symbolized dignity. It was the pure essence of an inspirational drama, where greatness grows from the ordinary. Lily, her younger sister, watched with pride. The small apartment they shared was modest but filled with warmth. Sophie cooked, laughed again, and listened to Lily talk about her dreams of studying law. "You'll defend people like us one day," Sophie would say, half joking. And Lily always replied, "No, I'll defend people like you." It was a bond built from love, resilience, and all the things money could never buy. Meanwhile, Daniel was living his own kind of exile. He had left his mother's mansion and ended things with Ashley, choosing silence over hypocrisy. He worked with a friend's architecture firm, earning less but finally breathing freely. Every night he thought of Sophie, not as the maid, but as the woman who taught him what honesty feels like. His life had lost its glitter but gained meaning, the foundation of any true moral story. One afternoon, the impossible happened. Sophie was cleaning the lobby when Daniel appeared at the entrance. No tuxedo, no arrogance, just jeans, a white shirt, and a hopeful smile. For a moment she froze, the vacuum still humming beside her. He walked closer and said softly, "I left everything behind. I just want to start over, and with you." The world stopped spinning. It felt like the beginning of a new emotional story. She hesitated, heart racing. "Daniel, this is my world now," she whispered. He smiled. "Then let me learn how to live in it." There was no grand music, no applause, just a simple, beautiful truth. Two people stripped of all illusions, choosing each other. The love that once hid under chandeliers now blossomed under fluorescent light, humble but real. That evening, they walked together through the quiet streets, sharing ice cream instead of champagne. They talked about nothing and everything, about dreams, about pain, about freedom. Sophie realized that happiness doesn't need witnesses. Sometimes it's just two souls walking side by side, laughing in the dark. It was the gentle poetry of a Maid millionaire story. Love found where no one dares to look. From afar, the Hale mansion still stood, proud and silent. Victoria had heard of Daniel's choice, and though her pride screamed something deeper, a mother's heart remained silent. Power can build empires, but not erase truth. And in that truth, Sophie and Daniel found what the world had tried to take from them: peace. As the night fell, Sophie looked at the stars and whispered, "We may have lost everything, But we found the only thing that matters in courage. The camera would pull back, framing the two of them walking away into the golden dusk. No luxury, no revenge, only love. Quiet, strong, eternal. The kind of ending every emotional story longs for but few dare to live. The hotel room was quiet, filled only with the faint hum of the city beyond the window. Daniel stood by the door holding nothing but truth in his eyes. "I left the mansion," he said softly. "I walked away from the money, from everything." Sophie stood across from him, still wearing her hotel uniform, disbelief flickering across her face. Love had brought him back, but life, that cruel, elegant judge, and stood between them. For a long moment, silence became the bridge neither dared to cross. Sophie lowered her gaze, the weight of the past pressing heavy on her chest. "You don't belong in this world," she whispered. Daniel smiled gently, his voice trembling yet sure. "Then teach me how to." It was the kind of line that would live forever in emotional stories, the heartbeat of an inspirational drama where pride meets surrender. They sat together on the edge of the narrow bed, sunlight spilling through half-closed blinds. The golden light kissed their faces, catching the dust that danced in the air. A soft halo around broken hearts learning to beat again. Sophie's hands trembled as Daniel reached for them. No words could measure that tenderness. It wasn't wealth or beauty or rebellion. It was simply love stripped to its core. Later they walked through the quiet streets, far from Beverly Hills' polished facades. Neon lights flickered against puddles on the pavement, painting reflections that shimmered like forgotten dreams. They laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. She held a cup of coffee. He carried a paper bag with sandwiches, and somehow it felt like freedom. Even without luxury, they looked like the richest people in the world. Sophie had once believed love was a luxury she couldn't afford. Now she understood it was the only currency that mattered. The city around them blurred into gentle colors, and the night air smelled like rain and redemption. Daniel looked at her as if seeing sunlight for the first time. In that glance, every wall between their worlds crumbled. Meanwhile, in the Hale mansion, Victoria's reflection stared back at her from a glass of wine. Her world had everything except her son. She could silence rumors, command respect, but not love. The silence in her golden dining room echoed louder than applause. She realized, too late, that control was not the same as connection. Her story, once one of triumph, was becoming a moral story about loss and pride. Back in the small apartment, Sophie leaned against Daniel's shoulder as they watched dawn paint the sky in soft golds and pinks. The light made everything feel new, the peeling wallpaper, the cheap curtains, even the cracked teacup on the table. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. Daniel smiled. "Not for a second. For the first time, I'm not living someone else's life." That morning, they decided to build something together. Not from marble or money, but from truth. She would keep working. He would start over, and both would hold on to the fragile miracle they had found. Their love was no longer a rebellion. It was a promise that dignity and devotion could coexist even in a world built to separate them. The camera would slowly pull back. Sophie and Daniel standing on the small apartment balcony. Sunlight on their faces, hands entwined. The wind carries the city's hum, but all you hear is the quiet rhythm of two hearts choosing courage over comfort. It's the closing frame of an English storytelling masterpiece, a Maid Millionaire story about love that defied privilege and proved that sometimes the simplest life holds the grandest dream. Sophie's world seemed to be rebuilding itself little by little, but the calm didn't last longer than a sunrise. Victoria Hale, driven by wounded pride and her obsession with control, began a silent war. With a single phone call, she turned Sophie's job into a minefield, whispering rumors, threatening lawsuits, and spreading poison in polite tones. Within hours, the young woman was dismissed. The same cold, powerful, and unfair system she had fought all her life struck her once again, pushing her back down just when she was beginning to stand. Sophie received the news in silence, her heart heavy, but her gaze unbroken. It was as if she had already sensed the blow, like someone who learns to recognize the shadow before the storm. Lily wanted to fight back, furious and helpless, but Sophie only smiled softly and said, "They can take my job, but not who I am." It wasn't a line for the stage. It was truth. A painful, liberating truth that needed no applause. Meanwhile, Daniel was facing hell inside his own home. Victoria threatened him with the loss of his inheritance, his reputation, his name. She'll ruin you, Daniel. That girl doesn't belong in our world. But he no longer recognized that the luxury now felt like a golden prison, and his mother, the warden. For the first time, the heir of the Hale fortune chose the poverty of freedom over the wealth of obedience. He ran to Sophie as soon as he heard she'd been fired. He found her sitting on the steps of the small boarding house she called home, holding an old suitcase in her lap. The wind tangled her hair, and the setting sun painted her sadness in gold. "Let me help you," he said, almost begging. But Sophie shook her head. "I don't want to be your shame, Daniel, or your burden." It was the kind of strength that only comes from a woman who has cried enough to know that real love shouldn't arrive as rescue, but as choice. Daniel knelt before her, as if surrendering an invisible crown. "You were never my shame. You're the only reason I want to be someone better." There was honesty in his voice, pain in his eyes, and a silent promise to fight for her until the end. Right there on that small step, two worlds declared war on everything that stood between them. From afar, Victoria watched the chaos she had unleashed. Her rage was fed by fear of losing her son, fear of losing control, fear of facing herself. Every strike she planned against Sophie was another attempt to bury the emptiness that power could never fill. But love, that quiet rebel disguised as weakness, was already slipping through her fingers like sand. Even wounded, Sophie refused to run. She looked for new jobs, faced rejection after rejection, endured cruel whispers and pitiful stares. Yet she kept going. What Victoria didn't understand was that those who have nothing left to lose are the ones who stop being afraid. And fear was the only thing holding the Hale Empire together. Daniel stayed by her side, even as everything around them fell apart. Without fortune, without comfort, but with something he had never known before: truth. They lived with little but laughed with much. They shared what they had and, more importantly, what they felt. Their love was no longer a choice. It was survival. As the world conspired to tear them apart, something stronger rose between them. Courage. The courage to love without hiding, to lose without breaking, to begin again when everything has collapsed. The war had begun. But for the first time, Sophie wasn't alone. And deep down, between pain and hope, something was being born that even Victoria Hale would never be able to control. Sophie and Daniel's lives moved forward in silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than 1,000 promises. Far from Beverly Hills, far from golden halls and cutting whispers, they found refuge in a small coastal town. Sophie began working at a modest inn, where the scent of sea breeze mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee. Daniel, now free from the weight of the Hale name, seemed transformed, lighter, more real. It was as if, for the first time in his life, he was finally breathing. Their love had no luxury, but it had truth. They traded jewelry for laughter, promises for dreams. At night, they walked barefoot along the empty beach, their hearts calm and full. Sometimes Sophie looked at the horizon and said, "Maybe love is just that, choosing to stay even when the world says no." And Daniel would smile, replying, "Then the world can wait." It was a love built on scars, but also on faith. Victoria, however, could not rest. In her cold mansion, silence had become her only companion. Power no longer comforted her, and the Hale name, once feared, was beginning to lose its shine. She told herself she was doing the right thing, protecting the family, she claimed. But the truth was that the emptiness inside her was deafening. Watching her son find happiness without her was the cruelest punishment of all. Yet pride was her golden prison, and she refused to let go of the keys. One afternoon, Daniel returned to the old house only to collect a few belongings. His mother's eyes followed him to the door, but he didn't stop. "You're throwing your life away," she said, her voice cold, trembling beneath the surface. "Maybe for the first time it belongs to me," he replied, and left. That door closed like both an ending and a beginning, the end of the obedient son, the birth of a free man. In their new life, Sophie and Daniel learned the beauty of simplicity. He began teaching photography. She started managing the inn. Neither of them knew what the future would bring, but both knew the present was theirs, and somehow that was enough. Sometimes happiness isn't something you win, but something you quietly choose every day, with courage and tenderness. Lily grew up watching her sister's example. She went on to study journalism, determined to tell stories of people like Sophie, judged for where they were born but defined by where they chose to go. Her words carried admiration but also hope, the certainty that kindness is the bravest form of resistance. Still, Victoria's shadow lingered at a distance. She tried to find where Sophie worked, who employed her, how to bring her down, but every attempt failed. It was as if life itself, in its poetic justice, was returning everything she had sown. Not with hatred, but with silence, because the punishment of the proud is often to watch love win without needing revenge. One night, Sophie watched Daniel sleeping, his face calm, his breathing soft. The streetlights filtered through the curtain, drawing golden lines across the small room. She thought about everything they had lost and everything they had found. Money could buy safety, but not peace. Luxury could offer comfort, but not love. And in that moment, Sophie understood. What they had was worth more than any inheritance. When Daniel woke, she whispered, "They may have the money, Daniel, but we have what they'll never have, courage." He held her close, saying nothing. Outside, the sun rose slowly, painting the sky in shades of gold. And while the world remained trapped in its illusion of power, two free hearts allowed themselves the rarest luxury of all, to love without fear. In the end, it wasn't wealth, power, or a last name that triumphed. It was love. Simple, stubborn, and brave, Sophie and Daniel proved that dignity is the rarest jewel anyone can wear, and sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover who you truly are. Every tear, every humiliation, every sacrifice led them here, to this moment where silence spoke louder than money, and the heart became the only truth that mattered. Now tell me, do you believe love can conquer even the cruelest prejudice? If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and let us know in the comments if you want to see part 2 of this journey, because Sophie and Daniel's love story is far from over, and fate still has one more card to play.